Hey, welcome back to Mornings with the Mayor. I'm your host, Mayor Robert Dye for the City of Farmers Branch. Just wanted to, come back and bring you all an inside look into the City of Farmers Branch and, have candid conversations, not only with fellow city leaders, but city staff, department heads, our chiefs, but we're also looking to engage with business community, with our school district and others who are helping to move our community forward. And we hope that we're able to give a more in-depth look into what is actually happening in the city of Farmers Branch, some of the conversations that are happening behind the scenes, and some of the ideas, thoughts, and policies that Farmers Branch has implemented over the time or looking to implement in the future that we believe is not only of interest to our citizens, but also of interest to those who are paying attention to what's going on in Farmers Branch and how we're moving forward. But the last few weeks been kind of spotlighting a few kind of coffee companies in and around the area. And so the newest one will be one of our newest businesses, Lemma Coffee Roasters. They're currently in downtown Carrollton, but are slowly making their way to our east side, right off of Midway. And so we're excited to have them. But today's episode, which is episode 5, features our police chief, David Hale. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Mayor. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm just glad you were able to carve out a little bit of time for us here. I know you're busy managing the squad and everything, but what's how's everything been treating you recently?
It's been going well. I mean, obviously, we're all dealing with COVID-19 and the pandemic. Um, you know, as police officers, we're used to dealing with adversity and dealing with problems. That's what we do. Is we serve the community and we deal with difficult circumstances. I will have to say, in my 27 and a half years in law enforcement, this has probably been the most unique circumstance that we've come across in policing. It's really kind of changed the way that we've had to do business, for a little while. But the officers are doing a great job of being flexible and continuing to serve our community. So I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, our officers have always done a tremendous job. I know they're one of the pride and joys of our community. And you talked about 27 years. So just trying to get a little bit more background on you. And I know you're an Aggie. So as a Red Raider, it's a little tough, but that's okay. Just trying to get more of the background of coming from College Station to where you are now as the police chief of Farmers Branch.
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated from A&M in 1990. Um, it was a long road. It took me I was one of those people that I was the first in my family, my immediate family, to actually go to university and graduate from college, and so I was very proud to be able to do that. I worked my way through. My family wasn't in a position to be able to, shell out the money for me to go, so I was an apartment maintenance man. I picked up garbage, cleaned swimming pools, and worked my way through school. So it took me about 6 years to get out ultimately, but it was all mine whenever we were done. I didn't owe anybody anything, and I think that's kind of what gave me my work ethic. It was just like, perseverance. I've got to get this done, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there.
Well, it's pretty impressive. I know it takes a lot to get through that, but then to work up. But over that amount of time, transitioning from school in 1990 to where you are now, what's been one of the biggest changes you've noticed in policing during that time? In terms of, is it the equipment? Is it the speed? Is it the thought process? Is it how you're engaging individuals in the community? What's been the biggest change?
I think you hit the nail on the head when you say that, how we engage our community. That has changed significantly since I started. I started out in a small town, actually in the city of Llano. My first police job was not with Farmers Branch. I stayed there a little less than 2 years. I'm originally from the Metroplex, a little town outside of Fort Worth, just west of there, called Aledo. So I wanted to get back closer to my family, and honestly, also was in a 6-man police department, you don't get paid very well. And I had this powerful degree from A&M, and I wanted to do more with it. I'm grateful for the opportunity I had there, but it was time for me to move back to be a little closer to the family and to being a little bit larger community, and even as much as I enjoyed it. But back to the original question, in the 90s, community policing, it's been around for a really long time. The original model for policing, that came out of England and Sir Robert Peel was, that the people are the police and the police are the people. And so it was never new for how walk the beat. You got to know the people that you knew. Obviously, technology and urbanization, changed a lot of how we operate. But in the 90s, we got back to where, we realized how important relationships really are. Policing in a democracy has always been a very uh, intricate process of balancing safety with individual liberty. And you constantly have to adjust how you do that. And community expectations plays a great part in, how people want to be policed is important. And every community is a little different. I'm really grateful for the American policing system that allows each community to kind of decide what do they want their response times to be. How many police officers do they want? How much freedom are they willing to give up to be safe? All of those things are something that we have to adjust really on a yearly basis. It's like what are community expectations? So I would say that is probably one of the biggest changes. Um, despite the massive changes in technology, I think that one's probably more important.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but it was interesting to hear that point that you made because obviously you have a wide breadth of history as it relates to policing. But the thought that the people are the police, and what was the rest of it? The police are the people. The police are the people, and you don't think about it, but like you said, like we have the ability as a city to provide and make our own policies of rules and things that we would want to enforce that I guess might differ from a little bit some of the other communities around us. But then when you get to the number of police officers we have, on our squad, or the amount of technology that we want to use, or the fact that we have, not only do we have, but we also expect 4.5 minute response times, which is head and heels above any of our rival communities in terms of how fast we're getting to people. But I think one of the challenges facing right now is the engagement with the community. I mean, right now it's hard out there to be a police officer, especially with the way the media covers any incident that happens, the scrutiny, the fact that you all have to make decisions on a split second, that with limited amounts of information that are just coming at you in real time to, none of us really understand what that's like, or what kind of pressure that is, but knowing that if there's just one misstep, that it's going to be completely put all over the media, and characterized however the media wants to spin it right out of the gates, or whatever it looks like. I think it would be tough, in terms of recruitment and bringing people in. And so how are the men and women that work for you, the men and women that you're recruiting to join the Farmers Branch Police Force, how are you working around some of that with it being such a difficult time policing in the community right now?
Well, to go back, Mayor, to something you said on reaching out to the community, I think something that's really important is for us to tell our story. I think we're doing that a little bit better instead of allowing, be it a media group, a newspaper, whomever, lead the dialogue and tell our story. I think it's become readily apparent that we need to tell our story better and from our perspective, and then let the chips fall where they may as far as how people want to perceive those stories. I think we've done a better job through social media of telling our story, and a part of that is humanizing our officers. We do make mistakes. We put our pants on one leg at a time, just like every other human being that is out there. It's just we're tasked with a very challenging and difficult job in our community. Um, so, I think that, in recruiting officers, the first thing that we're looking for is people who have a servant's heart. I can teach most people how to be a police officer. Um, there are certain aspects that you do have to have. We're very picky about who we choose because, service is probably the most important aspect of what we do. The crime fighting side of it, it's fun. It's why a lot of us got into it. We want to catch the bad guys. We want to keep our community safe. But 95% of what we do is community caretaking. And so, it's really important that we choose the right person, coming in the door, that they come in with a servant's heart and they have the ability to serve regardless of whatever that call is. And then we teach them the mechanics of policing and law and how to do that. So, we hire for personality and for character, and we teach you how to be a police officer. But that folks who are interested in this job, that it's kind of with all the challenges, it has been a little tougher to recruit. So we just have to give more tests, and but I've committed to not only my officers who have to work with the new people that come in, but the community, that we're not going to lower our standards just because we're not getting as many people through the door. We may have to talk to a lot more people before we get there.
Yeah, and I've always liked that you've always put that focus on, we want to hire the individual first, and who they are and what are their character traits, and do they have a servant's heart, and are they able to be a leader and someone that's going to be the right fit for not only the squad but our community. I think is a testament to the length of time that a lot of officers actually stay with our city. I've seen so many of them from not only my time in school, but coming through and being in the community for so long and being a part of them, to see them around and know their names and faces just makes it a little bit easier to engage with them. But in terms of personalizing the officers, to get them kind of ingrained in our community and know different aspects, to where I know there's been stories of the past that there's known people that our officers know that make it a little bit easier to have the conversation with an individual, or to help them out if they're going through a difficult time or finding themselves in another situation, unfortunately. But for us as the community, and engaging with our officers, what is it that we might be able to do better to help you all out as well?
Absolutely. Keeping a community safe is most definitely a two-way street. We need the community to help us do that. Without their support, and quite frankly, their eyes as well, and ears, making that phone call when something doesn't seem right. Nobody's better to know when there's something wrong in the neighborhood than the folks that live there. And so that commitment from our community to be willing to engage with us to help keep the community safe. The old saying, it takes a village. And, Farmers Branch is that village, and all the people that are in it make up the safety net that we need, to maintain, a relatively crime-free community. And so we rely heavily on every one of our citizens, to be those eyes and ears, and to help us, to keep the community safe. I think it's through our citizens police academies. We always have two of those a year that we engage members of our community, and they get an inside look at what policing truly is in Farmers Branch, and what their police department looks like. Because at the end of the day, this is their police department. They're paying taxes. They're paying our salaries. So we love the opportunity to have those academies and to have our citizens come in and see what we do. And I'll tell you, Mayor, I've not seen anybody that has left one of those citizens police academies that did not walk away with a new respect for policing and for the great men and women that we have here in this organization.
Yeah, I've as someone who's been a part of one of those classes, I still need to graduate. Unfortunately, having the title of mayor, it pulls me away some nights, and so I had to miss some classes, but need to finish that up, and look forward to doing so, because I thoroughly enjoyed taking it and learning an entirely getting a different perspective of what you all go through, the different skills that are needed in the different aspects of policing that you just don't even think about. But, in terms of, how we as city leaders or council members are trying to drive growth in our city and hopefully make positive changes that benefit our community, how are some of the policies that we implement, affecting you all? I think about as we change our east side from, more warehouse and business driven area of our community to something that has, more density, more apartment complexes, more homes and more just people being there, not only during the day, but, as we move towards, more living opportunities over there and potentially more nightlife and entertainment. How do you think that's going to affect your job and calls for service and needs and or strains on the department?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with density, Mayor. And looking at the broader picture, and even my own kids that are almost adults or adults now, is that living in a more dense community is something that they're very interested in doing. I know my 21-year-old and my 18-year-old that's about to go off to college. They look at me mowing the grass, trimming the hedges, doing all that stuff, working on the fence, replacing the fence, working the flower beds, all of that good stuff that home ownership comes with. They're like, Dad, what, you work all day, you work these long hours, and you come home and you continue to work. I happen to enjoy it, but they go, why would we want to do that? We like doing these things. They're more linked to their friends through social media and gaming online and doing those kind of things. And so their vision of the American dream is a little bit different than what mine was, and that's okay. That's fine. So that's the way our community is moving. I think that's the way our nation is moving, quite frankly. People are kind of moving back, to the closer to the inner city where things are walkable. They're able to bike. They're able to enjoy their free time more and not mow the grass and do all the things that I was talking about earlier. So that's where we're headed. We're going to be flexible in doing that. Yes, the density does cause our calls for service to go up. More people means you're going to get more calls. But we've done an analysis and looked at what that means for us, and we've brought that to the council and to the city manager, and we've gotten 4 new positions over the last several years to help deal with that growth. And so I think we're positioned pretty well to deal with it. There's challenges that come with having a whole lot more people in our community, but there's also so many other good things that come along with it, as far as our ability to get the restaurants that that people have been asking for, to get the retail that the people have been asking for so many years. And it's what you have to do in order to get those things. And so you have to deal with those growing pains. And I think the officers are ready for the challenge. I think technologically, we're aligning ourselves in such a way that we're going to be able to utilize technology to be able to, uh, you know, help us to not have to have as many people, but to deal with some of our crime issues, utilizing, the myriad of technologies that's available to law enforcement out there. So it will have an impact on us. Our response times, we'll have to keep those monitored pretty well. But right now, I think we're in a pretty good position, to work with the growth, and we're excited about what's going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're all excited. And, one of the things that we're focused on at council is, how with the amount of growth that's happening, with how it's accelerating, it takes a while to get someone hired, trained, and actually put on a beat in the city. And so trying to make sure that we're able to give you the resources you need to, patrol and keep, the city's level of safety where it's been and where we all expect it to be. We have to be thinking long term about that and making sure that we're hiring the right amount of people. But that leads to maybe a different conversation, and one I get excited about sometimes, is what is the future of policing and how can technology that maybe we've thought about on a smaller scale, or technology that we're currently implementing that helps out. I think about, the fact that we're starting to look at drones and what we can do with those. We're looking at license plate readers on some of our points of ingress and egress to the city. But then also, when you look at smart city technology, how does that play into areas in the city in terms of, I look at Shot Spotter, which is technology that if a gunshot's fired within 30 seconds, it can triangulate within 5 feet of where that happened, and also differentiate between different sounds and know exactly that that was indeed a gunshot that could alert, our police squads to something happening, whether it's just in the community, at a school, or somewhere else. It could help provide enhanced safety. Where do you see some of that going? What's been your experience with technology we've put in place, and what's your thoughts on technology we should possibly look at as a community as we go into the future, as we're building more density and changing the way some of our areas of our city look and feel?
Absolutely. To start out with drones, so we have started our drone program, and for those of that may be watching, is we have to certify our officers as pilots. It's unlike the private sector or somebody that's a hobbyist. We have to actually go through a training program, take an FAA test, and so we have 6 pilots now, and we've got 5 drones. 4 of those are smaller ones that we send out into the field that are capable of being utilized without having to come back to the department. And then we have a larger drone that we can deploy as well, that has serves some different functions. The larger drones have the infrared capability to be able to see at night. So if we have somebody that's lost, or if we have somebody that we're looking for in a neighborhood that may have committed a crime, it's a much more cheaper alternative than flying a traditional helicopter. But we have the same capability. And so that program is up and running. We are utilizing them, and we've had some good success with those so far. We have a pilot program for a fixed license plate reading system that coming into our city on Marsh Lane at Ridgeo. And the way that one is designed to work is that when we get hits on a vehicle that may be stolen, or a license plate has been associated with somebody who has committed a crime, then that information gets sent directly to every one of the beat units, to their laptop computer in their vehicle, letting them know that vehicle has entered the city, and what its direction of travel is. And we have recovered numerous stolen vehicles. We've arrested several wanted felons through that process. And so just that one entry to our city alone has netted a tremendous amount of public safety for our community, because of its ability to it doesn't see people, it doesn't take pictures of people, it just recognizes license plates. And if that plate is associated with a crime or is stolen, then we're going to go after it. And we've had some really good success with it. So I think more of that is probably in our future. And again, it goes back to kind of the balance that I talked about in the policing in a in a democracy. You know, I, I think people are becoming more and more comfortable with technology and its uses. Um, Oftentimes, people are a little bit reluctant for law enforcement to have certain things, and I do understand that. But again, that technology is allowing us to do more with less, and I think that's very important for the taxpayer.
Yeah, that is important. And I would say, I mean, do you feel that those license plate readers that we put in and spent some money on, that those are already not only paying dividends, but definitely already paying for themselves?
Absolutely, they're paying for themselves. Just, if you had to take a police officer and put them on an intersection and have them run license plates all day, that's a pretty expensive venture. Whenever you have, a system that's capable of doing this, and it's just a great force multiplier for us. And so, I'm definitely a fan of the technology. I realize there's some folks out there that may not be, but it definitely works. And as far as the privacy matters go, it's not information that we're allowed to give out. It rolls off the system in 90 days. until it's gone. Uh, and we don't maintain it. We don't sell it to anybody. So our policies are really strict on who we can share that information with. And the fact is there's only one other group of people we can, and it's other law enforcement. And beyond that, it doesn't get sold. It doesn't get. You can't call up here and say, "Hey, did y'all see this person come through this intersection?" It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I think about, you hear the stories of, certain groups think that, is that too much Big Brother, is that too much governmental oversight with, I remember the red light cameras, while yeah, they probably made us safer, less, fatal car crashes and other things, made you at least think twice before you ran a red light. You look at the license plate readers that we have, but I look at instances of San Francisco that put up camera systems throughout their community to just put more, eyes and ears on the street, especially in high traffic areas. You look at what London is doing with facial recognition software and other things that are being used in a similar fashion as license plate readers, but to identify, potential criminals or someone that they're looking for, to where, the arguments have been, is that an overreach? Is that, too much oversight from the government and how we're tracking people, not realizing that it's not in place, that it's mostly been put in place. We don't care who's there, who's going into this business or what they're doing, but it's just a retroactive look of what actually happened should an incident have taken place. Where else could we get some additional information to potentially track a criminal? But when you look at what's happening in London, and you're getting a lot of pushback from the citizens saying that this is just too much, to where people are now, during the time of COVID, right, they can wear masks and other things and they probably feel better, but they feel that the AI isn't there, that the database hasn't been developed enough to truly accurately recognize, different people, instead of misrepresenting that, hey, this was so-and-so that we were looking for. And in fact, it actually wasn't. And what kind of, infringement on their liberties does that have? How do you see that playing out here? And is there a way that those type of technologies can be deployed to where a community would actually embrace it rather than be resistant?
Mayor, I think education is the key on that. The fact is we don't use any one piece of information to make a determination on whether or not somebody committed a crime or not. And I think that is a key. Solid investigation by trained police officers is always going to be a requirement. And it's just like with the cameras that we have now. Just the mere hit alone, that the license plate reader is sending you an alert saying, hey, this is a stolen vehicle. We have to confirm that through another process through the state before we'll even turn on our lights to try to stop the vehicle. So there's always additional, uh, you know, things in place and additional investigation that has to occur. I would agree. I would be the citizen standing there saying, yeah, I'm not sure we're ready to do this if that's all you're relying on. But the fact is that is just one piece of the puzzle. It's a tool for us to utilize. And it's like, hey, this is our lead. This is our break. We think we might have the person that committed that offense. And the key is we think. And so there has to be additional corroboration and investigation in order for us to take all of those pieces of the puzzle to solve a crime. And this just gives us the ability to start that chain, to actually have something to go from so that we can do a full, accurate, and thorough investigation before we come to any determination as to whether or not we think somebody committed a crime. The key is always going to be there's going to be a police officer behind that arrest warrant if it comes out in a good investigation.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at technology as not a way to replace any officers or to do anything of that nature, but it's more of, like you said, it's a tool. It's something supplemental that they can pull out of their toolbox to help them with an investigation. Go back, look at what might have happened, or get that one small piece of information to allow the detectives or the investigators to grab a hold of something that can help them solve, a potential crime. But then there's also an awareness from the public too, that if you know that there's extra eyes and ears around, do you think twice about anything that you might do? It's kind of, I love those stories. You told at one of the meetings that I got to go to, one of y'all's briefing meetings in the morning, where you found the individuals that were stealing tires and wheels off of 18 wheelers that had been parked. And when you guys busted them, they showed up in Farmers Branch, and he goes, "Man, I told you not to go to the city with the red signs." And so, hearing some of that, knowing that there's kind of a reputation for our city, for our officers, and the great work that they do, that they know, hey, you're probably going to get busted in the city, which is a testament to our low crime rate. I love hearing some of that. But anything that we would ever be able to do to help y'all, whether, like you said, through it's that drone program or the license plate readers, or just helping out in any way, I'm a big fan of, how else can we help and provide additional support that, makes it easier for you all to do your job, especially as we've already talked about it. It's getting tougher and tougher to be a police officer in this climate that we're in right now. But when you think about the current climate and what we're going through, I think of the coronavirus, and I just want to thank you and all the men and women on the police force for putting themselves on the front lines each and every day, putting themselves at risk, engaging with our community, continuing to keep us safe when many of us have to shelter at home. And I know a lot of them would also like to be home with their families as well, but they realize that, as you said, they have that servant heart and they want to be out there. They want to provide protection. And so just grateful for everything that they're doing. But, with that, like, what's been the hardest part that you're hearing from the men and women on the street during this time, or that you've had to deal with as we move, as we're trying to work through this pandemic?
Yeah, Mayor, I think the biggest thing is, we all have families, and we took our oath, we raised our right hand and said that, we're going to protect this community, and we'll continue to do that. But, we don't have a choice many times on social distancing. If we have to arrest somebody and they don't necessarily, want to come along quietly, and there's a wrestling match, we're going to be in very close quarters, with folks. And so we don't always have that insulation of maintaining the social distancing. We're providing, our officers with all the latest PPE. The city's done a great job of, supplying that for us. And kudos to the fire department for managing all those PPE requests, and maintaining them and getting them to us, as we need them. The hand sanitizers, eye protection, all of that stuff. We've armed our officers with all of those extras, during this pandemic, to keep them as safe as we can, while still realizing that we have a very important job to do. And I think probably the biggest fear that, that I've heard is, potentially coming in contact with somebody that does have the virus, and then taking it home to their, their wife, or their loved ones, their kids, and, causing somebody else to become ill because of it. I think that's the biggest fear that I've seen organizationally. But despite that, the officers continue to come in. They wear their masks. They're doing, everything they can within reason to do their job as safely as they can, but yet continue to do their job. Kind of another challenge that's kind of interesting is that, our officers enjoy getting out and doing their job. And, I had to, slow them down through some special orders saying, hey, until we got to get control of this, and know how this stuff spreads, in the first couple of weeks during the shelter in place, it's like, look, we're going to significantly reduce traffic stops. Because, we're not sure how, they're saying this is, super bug, and you can get it real easy. So, kind of pulling in the reins on them a little bit and saying, hey, let's kind of see what we got and do what we absolutely have to do for the moment. And we'll get back to our normal duties. They were actually on Monday, whenever we kind of opened back up to our 25%. They were like, does this mean that we can kind of go back to stopping cars and doing those things? They're ready to get back to do their job. They're like,
Yeah.
well, we're not coming back, coming to work every day just to drive around in circles. When can we get back to normal? And so that was kind of an interesting side effect of it, is that it's like, hey, we really don't like the reins pulled in. Let's go do our job.
Yeah, that's interesting. But then it also touches back to what we talked about earlier in terms of policy and direction. And I know that you're engaging with Charles, all the time in terms of different things. And I think the directive was kind of, hey, let's enforce, but let's try to be more helpful during this time, and, provide warnings and make sure that people are just reminding them to do the right thing. And that was kind of some of the impetus and I guess not really the impetus, the focus of, in the initiative that we were driving forward is, let's remind people to social distance and do some of these things and be safe and stay home, rather than just ticket every single person that we can that's out, because, people are struggling right now. We have a lot of vulnerable citizens who have found themselves in hard times, and we need to be mindful of that. And the fact that you guys have taken that and provided that and been that caring figure that is saying, hey, we're here to help, and it's not just, hey, we're going to give everyone a ticket every time. And we've kind of let a few things slide, which I think, for what we were going through, perfectly fine, given that there were so many less people on the road, so many people out and about. Maybe it made sense during this time, but when, like you said, as we open back up and as people, think that they can still drive 50 miles an hour, down Webb Chapel, like, no more, like, hey, we're going to get back to doing our job. And it's good to see that they're excited to do that, but it's good to know that they're also doing it with a servant's heart and compassion for individuals as we're going through this. But, I guess, we hear a lot from Chief Parker regarding, COVID, because, that's from kind of, the emergency management side and what we're doing there. But, have we had any cases of any of our officers having symptoms, getting sick, needing to go on leave or quarantine during this time? Or has everyone kind of been, handling it appropriately, and the PPP, all the, the protective equipment that we've given y'all, has that helped make sure that everyone's remained safe, at least on the police force during this time?
That's a great question there. We stopped meeting for our normal briefings, pretty early on. We were meeting out, outside, weather permitting, or, in some of our covered areas, so that, we could maintain that social distance. So we put in quite a few things in place to actually socially distance ourselves from one another. And so I think that's been helpful. We have, to answer your question specifically, we've had 0 officers test positive for COVID-19, which
that's amazing.
I'm so grateful for that. But we have had officers that have had symptoms and that have been tested. We've had about 5 officers that we've actually had tested, but they've all come back negative, that had, some symptom. We're in the middle of allergy season as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and there's been news stories talking about, do I have COVID or do I have allergies? So I think we've experienced some of that, but with what we do, we're better safe than sorry. So we have sent people home when they're symptomatic or we believe they might be, and we get the test back pretty quickly, and find out that they're not ill. Unfortunately, we've had one officer who lost his father-in-law to COVID. So everybody's going to know somebody that's either had this or somebody that may have passed away from it. And so, we've had a couple of folks, in our extended family who, have, one that has passed away, and then we've had one that actually has recovered. A family member who has recovered and is recovering at home. So that puts it really into perspective for us, that, everybody, like I say, is going to know somebody that has had some, encounter with this horrible virus. And so, but we're just very grateful that nobody, here has tested positive. And, we've all got families. And so those exposure risks, sometimes when you go home, you might be as likely to get it from, exposures at home as you are at work, because, people are still, vulnerable to it in our families as well.
Yeah, no, that's true. And, that's tough to hear. And I'm sorry for their loss. That's unfortunate. Like you said, by the end of this, we're all probably, the odds are that we're all going to know someone that was impacted and potentially died from this virus, which is, it's kind of tough to swallow when you think about that, and you think about all your friends and their extended families and those that, that one of them, might not make it through this when we're fully able to come back and got under control and can manage it. But, what has been your perception of, actual crime during this time with so many people sheltering in place and actually staying at home and only going out for things that they absolutely need? Have you actually seen a reduction in the number of calls, or has it spiked in certain areas in terms of what we're seeing out there in terms of 911 calls?
It's actually been very fascinating. So my degree is in sociology and psychology, and so I'm fascinated by human behavior. I think
Hmm.
I got into the right field. So we've actually overall we've seen about a 20% reduction in calls for service just for the police department. So our calls for service went down as people, sheltered in place. So that was interesting, and I did expect that to some degree. However, we did see an increase in calls for service in regards to domestic violence. We've seen that in the news as well. You get folks at home, get the kids at home, they're no longer in school, all of the pressures of the virus, people losing their jobs, people having their lives impacted and turned upside down. Um, we did expect to see an increase in domestic violence during this time, and we have seen that. It hasn't been a giant leap, but we have seen those disturbance type calls go up during this time. Something else that's actually been interesting as well and unfortunate is that we've seen about a 50% increase in mental health calls.
Hmm.
And we're dealing with pretty small numbers, and then because that sounds horrible, you're talking about from going to maybe 5 a week to 10. Uh, but it's still a significant increase in the pressures that are put on folks who may already, have some issues, mentally with their health that this just exacerbates those problems. And so we have seen an increase in those calls for service as well, and been able to get those folks to the help that they've needed.
Yeah, and that's, I'm glad last night that we took a considerable amount of time at the council meeting to discuss mental health awareness, and that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, because, this has been a stress point. Definitely from, we heard it from Clay Jenkins early on. I know I relayed several times through some of my messaging the importance of paying attention to those around you, because like you said, we anticipated that, not only was domestic violence potentially going to go up, but, people that are stuck at home, that are dealing with depression and anxiety and other issues, this is only going to exacerbate those situations. And we need to be mindful of, what we're sharing on social media during this time and some of these other things. Because if you're just showing images and videos of, you having a good time and being in a good position and doing all these cool things that other people don't have the opportunities to do, is that exponentially going to make it worse and impact these individuals? And like you said, if someone's lost a job and they have to spend more time at home, how does that depression and anger and other things, where's their outlet? And unfortunately, you're seeing it in some of the families, and it's just, it's hard to watch. And it's something that we all need to be aware of. And how can we help people through these difficult times get to the other side, so that, families and kids aren't impacted, but also those that have mental health issues are still able to get the treatment and things that they observe. And so, that's how's, I guess final question on that is, how are how's your team helping families deal with that as those calls are coming in, to make sure that, things are, I guess, going to be okay, or that you can find solutions, or these individuals can find the help that they need during this time?
Yeah, Mayor, great question. Our officers, the key, most people just in any circumstance, whether there's a mental health issue involved or not, uh, most of the time people just want to be heard.
Mhm.
They want us to be able to listen instead of, as police officers, oftentimes, in my early career, it's like, no, we come in, we fix it, and we move on. But we've learned since then that a lot of times the fix is not within our grasp, but it may be something that you know, it may be just us spending an extra 5 or 10 minutes on a call, just listening to a person's needs, uh, things that, aren't going well for them. Because, we do realize that a lot of people have lost their social nets during this process, and the
Hmm.
contact they may have may just be with us. And so, us having our officers be able to be good listeners and be compassionate and understanding in the hearing what they're hearing, I think that plays a huge role in somebody's ability to say, you know what, I feel better just having talked to someone, and we hear that all the time. I've got a great one that came in. Actually, we've got a through the city. We've got a compliments and complaints email system, for the entire city, and I got one yesterday that was a thank you to one of my officers because, like I was saying, we started getting back to making our traffic stops a little more rigorously, and trying to get people to slow down. And this officer had made a traffic stop for somebody that holds a stop sign and made the stop, made contact with the individual, and the person was noticeably upset. And they had just been furloughed from a job that they'd had for 27 years. And,
Man.
the thank you is for the officer having listened to his circumstance. And then secondly, for saying, you know what, you got a lot on your mind. I can see why you probably did that. Be careful. It is a violation of the law. Hope things get better for you, and let go with a warning. And this person was just so grateful for that compassion and for, having the understanding that, look, I've just experienced something, after 27 years of working somewhere, I've just been furloughed. And
Yeah.
that's a horrible thing. And so I'm grateful that my officers have the wherewithal and the compassion to actually make those decisions in the field and do it in the right way for the right reasons.
That's incredible, and I love hearing great stories like that, and just touching again on the compassion that we talked about and what we look for in our officers. And when you see those comments come in, essentially unsolicited, to explain and thank someone for having that is just a testament to what you've been doing. But I would love to kind of maybe in this piece of the discussion on another positive note, like what's been your favorite or proudest moment and your favorite story during your time as being part of a police department.
That's a great question, Mayor. For me, I've had a lot of exciting moments, during my 27 years. But I think probably, the sanctity of human life is something that we truly respect. And, the saving of another human being is probably the most important thing that I've ever been involved with. We had a spring storm here in Farmers Branch, and we had gotten a lot of rain, and we were getting flash flooding that was going on in the city. And this was before we uh, raised the bridges on Marsh Lane. We had barricades set up, to keep people from going around the barricades and going into the, rising waters that had already come up over the bridge. But this person, for whatever reason, chose to go around the barricade, which wasn't a wise choice. But nonetheless, it found them in a very precarious situation. Their vehicle was already floating on the bridge. Um, and it was the water was continuing to rise as the flash flood waters, started to move on down the creek. And so I show up and see this, and I wade off into the water. I'm a young officer, not really thinking about, the danger that I'm going into with this swift water. Um, so, I wade out there. I get to the window of the vehicle that's rolled down, and contact the person that's in the vehicle. And again, the water's starting to rise and it's starting to teeter up against the edge of the bridge railing, as if it's starting to think about going over and going on down the creek. So I
Yeah.
have to quickly get this person out. And I come to realize, as I'm trying to get them out, he says, I'm a paraplegic. I don't have use of my legs. And so it was all that much more important that I was, had to get this person out and get them back to safety. And so got him over my shoulder and got him back to the, you know, uh, out of harm's way and out of the water. And, the fire department was showing up at that time and, getting all their equipment out to get ready to help. And I got the person to the edge, and they scolded me for going into that high water because you realize how dangerous that was. And truth is that's not what I was thinking about. I didn't think about how dangerous it was. I just saw the person there, and I knew they needed my help, and so I did what my instinct said, and that's to save a human life. And I don't think you can do anything more appreciative than that. Is to save somebody and give them a chance to go back to their families and enjoy whatever comes after that.
That's just an incredible story, and goes back to you think about how quickly y'all need to make a decision, right? And you didn't even think about it, just jumped in, got there, realized this person needed help immediately, especially given their paraplegic state, and being able to not only get him out of the car and rescue him, but definitely know that you did save his life, because had that car gone in, there was nothing that probably could have been done at that point to get back in there and help. So that's just an incredible story. And I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I feel that, many of the other men and women on the police force, probably have a similar story of something to where it's not something, that's just full on action or something that you would think about in terms of, like what you probably see in the movies with a gunfight or something, but it's just a moment of compassion when someone who needed help in an unsuspecting way, and you were there to provide that aid in a capacity that's normally not in your line of duty, the line of work that you just kind of see fit. So just hearing that and thinking about it's more than just being on the street. It's truly providing aid and being more than just a police officer in some of these moments is absolutely incredible. And so that's fantastic. But, I would like to move into a few more personal questions. They're going to be coming at you pretty quick. So they're kind of out of left field, but just trying to, get a little bit more insight into who you are. And so, the first question I want to ask is, what is the right number of Hawaiian shirts for a grown man to own?
at least a month's worth. So at least a supply of 30 Hawaiian shirts. And they actually have to be at least on the tag. They don't have to I didn't have to physically get them in Hawaii, even though I have a bunch of those as well. But as long as they're made in Hawaii, then that fits the bill. I wear this uniform. I've worn it for the last, 27 and a half years. But in the summer, when I show up to work, I come in with my shorts, my flip-flops, and my Hawaiian shirt and my ball cap. Because my folks need to see that, I'm a human being just like they are. And they get enough of me and being the chief. They need to see me whenever I'm, just the aging over 50 guy who likes Hawaiian shirts.
So does that make you a parrot head as well? You big into Jimmy Buffett?
Absolutely. I love it.
Okay, great. Well, we're also in the same Rotary, which has been fantastic getting to know you in that capacity. What's been more rewarding or your favorite piece of being in the Rotary? Is it being a Paul Harris Fellow? Is it being president this past year, or is it something else?
Yeah, Mayor, I most certainly, appreciate, being a Paul Harris Fellow and making that contribution, and reaching that level of, support, for Rotary. But I think especially during this pandemic, the COVID-19 event, it pretty much shut our meetings down. A big part of Rotary is, getting together, meeting, having a speaker, and just enjoying one another's fellowship. And, with all the social distancing and the rules that were most definitely needed, we had to stop doing that. And so it was nice to be able to be in a leadership position. As you well know, we've moved to online meetings, much like we're doing here today. And to be able to keep that fellowship going, to be able to check on one another, and again, to continue to do the work of Rotary of service above self has been fantastic. Donating over $20,000+ to MetroCrest Services, from our fund. Just being a part of that and a part of a club that is so giving, it's, I think my presidency has definitely been a pinnacle, even though it's been non-traditional and a little more difficult than maybe some others.
Yeah, well, you've definitely helped us navigate a lot of this, and we're thankful for your leadership and what you've brought to our club over this past year as president. Can't thank you enough for that. But I'm looking at your wall back there, and I'm going to go out on a limb. Not really an outdoors guy. You could probably tell that by just looking at me. But is that fly fishing gear on the wall, and is that an actual hobby of yours?
Absolutely. It certainly is. I took up fly fishing many years ago. My wife is actually grew up in New Hampshire. I'd never fly fished in my life, but my father-in-law introduced it to me. I fell in love with it. I tie my own flies, have all the feathers and fur and all of that stuff. And there's just something so rewarding about tying some feathers and hair on a hook, throwing it out in the mountain stream, with all the solitude of being out there in the stream, and whether you're catching a fish or not, it's just such a stress reliever. I have plenty of excitement in my career, and so it's really nice to be able to be in a quiet place with a little solitude, to relax and just kind of enjoy nature. So it's a hobby that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, I've been places where it's definitely optimal conditions, and it's something on my list of things to do one day, because it definitely looks like it's truly an art form. It's not like some fishing I see where you just kind of throw your line in the water and let the boat kind of just float around until you grab something. That there's more of a strategy involved in when you're tying your own flies and different things. It's something that takes a little bit more practice. And like you said, but the peaceful nature of, being in the stream, being by yourself, being typically in a beautiful environment, just something speaks to that being on my list of something to do in the future. So, good to see that what you're doing and get opportunities to do that. But final question. We've done several chili competitions together in terms of tasting, been to several events where you've actually been on stage doing the cooking yourself. And from what I've heard from many people, you're actually a very talented chef. So I would like to know, what is your favorite meal to make and why?
So that is another one of my hobbies. I do love to cook. In another life, I would have loved to have been a chef, and maybe in retirement, maybe I will. Who knows? But there's something. It's very rewarding to watch somebody sit down and eat a meal that you prepared and say, "Wow, this is great." It's about bringing people together and enjoying one another's company. I grew up on a cattle ranch for the most part. With my grandparents were on 7,800 acres. And so I spent a lot of time in the outdoors. Definitely a meat and potatoes kind of guy because I grew up that way. So I think a chicken fried steak is probably one of my classics that I do, and it's very unique. And I've been told that it's there's none like it anywhere else. So that's probably my number one. But my second one would actually probably be seafood. I make a really great shrimp and grits that is made with, and I'll go ahead and let the secret out. The coconut milk in the grits is the key to making great shrimp and grits. So I'll just throw that out there. It's free to anybody who wants to use it. I do have I'm not an Iron Chef, but I do have a certificate that says I'm a stainless steel chef, and so I won that.
Okay.
I won that with shrimp and grits. So.
That's fantastic. I'm going to have to try both of those. Do you cook your chicken fried steak in a skillet, or is that in a pan?
It is an iron skillet that I actually inherited from my grandfather, who's no longer with me, but it's probably the most prized possession he could have left me. And it's
Wow.
very well seasoned, and I guard it with my life.
As a Texan, I'm glad to hear that that's how you're making it, because that's the correct way. So I don't know what I'm gonna have to do to bribe you to try both of these dishes one day, but if they're as good as you say they are, and based on the food that I've seen you prepare before, it's probably definitely worth trying. But I do want to thank you for taking time out of your day to being on Mornings with the Mayor today. I feel like it's been a wonderful conversation and a great opportunity just to get to know you a little bit more, but also a little bit more of a deeper dive into what you're doing in terms of leading the Farmers Branch Police Department on a daily basis.
Well, thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here. I thank you for inviting me. It has been a great conversation. I love the city. It's been really good to me, and so I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, but also all that this city has done for me. I've grown up here. I came here as an adult, but in reality, I grew up here. So I really enjoy, you know, working here and leading this organization. I couldn't ask for a better job. So thank you.
Well, thank you again, Chief David Hale. It's been an honor. Just want to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, this is Mornings with the Mayor. I'm your host, Robert Dye. We come to you live from the city of Farmers Branch and just trying to give you a deeper dive into the inner workings of our city, where we're headed and where we're going. So with that, next week will be a new episode. Got a surprise guest. Not going to get that out in front of y'all right now, but looking forward to that. So hope you all stay safe, stay home, and definitely stay positive. Talk to y'all then.